Hi guys, this video is long overdue, or maybe not. Everything's in the right time. This is a video I've been wanting to create for a very long time, and the subject that I'm going to share about, I've shared so many times that it's time to just create a video and share it. In order to really appreciate what it is that I have to say, I think there's a few things that we need to put in place. And that is to acknowledge that we are a host. And within us as a creation, as a host, we have all different things. There's a me and I have a body. And within my body, food comes in and it goes out. Within my body and within my mind, thoughts come in and they go out. Or they come up and they go out. Or they come up and they stay. I have emotions. I experience them. I express them. If I don't express them, they get trapped, whatever it is. But fact is that there is a me, and then there are thoughts and feelings and emotions and food and whatever it is that flow through me or come up inside of me and go out or stay. The main point that I want to establish here is to consider that we are not our thoughts. There's me and I have thoughts. There's me and I have feelings. I have a feeling. Therefore, if I am not my feelings, then let's just put that aside for a second and let's look at another thing. The thoughts that I have are going to inform and are going to shape my emotions. If I think or if I know something about something, they're going to inform my experience about them. Just like a painting, just like a person, just like a time, like I've shared in a previous video. What I know and think about something is going to inform how I'm going to feel, whether it's true or not. It's going to shape how I feel, as long as I believe it. If I believe it, it's going to shape how I feel, it's going to shape the type of actions I'm going to take, and it's going to change the type of impact I'm going to have. So, if that is the case, then certain thoughts are having me feel and behave and create an impact that I don't want. And there are certain beliefs and thoughts that I have that if I believe them, they're going to inform and shape emotions and actions that I do want. So, when I go through a process of identifying the thoughts that I have that create pain or create a life that I don't want, and identify the thoughts that if I thought them, I would allow me to do the things that I really want to do and have me not do the things I don't want to do. Once I become clear about these two things, then it's just a matter of switching them up. So, out of all the ways of switching up those thoughts, actually, I'm going to point out one more thing, and that is, it's not just the thought, it's believing the thought. When the thought turns into a belief, and especially if that belief is about me, there is nothing, out of all the beliefs and thoughts that I have, the ones that are going to influence my life more than any else is going to be the thoughts about who I am. So, if I think that I am alone, that I'm going to do things to try to make myself not feel alone. It's going to create a feeling of loneliness. If I know that I'm never alone, for example, this beautiful story, I believe it was Rabbi Steinsaltz, and he comes to the Rebbe and the Rebbe asks him if he came with his wife, and he said, no, I'm traveling alone. And the Rebbe says, no, a Jew is never alone. So the Rebbe was super clear and meticulous in the idea that a Jew is never alone. A person is never alone. So he was cultivating that idea within his Chassidim. So that's one belief that I could believe, and the other one is that even, so there are people that are not even alone and they feel alone because they believe the idea that they are lonely. The thought that they have about themselves is that they are alone. So out of all the ways that we can remove or replace the ideas that are not useful for useful ideas, the one way that I have found that is most helpful, I would say that the person that probably taught me this the most is J.P. Morgan, John Patrick Morgan, the coach that coached me for a while, for 2 years. And that is forgiveness. When I forgive myself for believing the idea. So if I forgive myself for believing that I am alone, and a truth that is more useful is the idea that I am never alone, then forgiveness is the most effective tool that I have found for myself. Now, there are 3 ways of how I can access this forgiveness. Number 1 is if I go back and I therapeutically dig down into my past to try to figure out, when did I begin believing this idea that I am alone? And what I will find is that most likely that idea was created sometime between the ages of 0 and 7 or 8. And when I began believing that, I was in a state of innocence. I was just a simple child who couldn't make sense of what it is that he was experiencing, or perhaps was told something, or was convinced something, or had to conclude that I am alone. And therefore, without even realizing that I was creating that belief, without even realizing that and the impact and the pain that belief would cause, I believed it. That's what I had to do at the time. Or even if I didn't have to, I was doing it completely innocently. And then once I started believing it as a 7-year-old, I continued to believe it as an 8-year-old, and eventually it didn't take too long for me to create a habit of believing that about myself. And once I become aware that I believe that about myself, or I actually have an experience of loneliness, I will probably start taking on another judgment, another non-useful idea, or maybe at the time it's useful, and that is to start doing things to have people in my life so I'm not alone. So it's like the necessary response to the idea that I'm alone. So now I'm protected, now I'm okay. So I start doing things that, even if they may, betray values that I have, they're necessary at the time in order to compensate for the lack, for the loneliness. So the first way of creating forgiveness is to look back into my past, find the moment that I created the idea and started believing the idea that something about myself, for example, if I'm lonely, and then forgive myself because I was innocent. And it doesn't make sense to judge a 7-year-old kid for believing something. That's the first way. The second way is I choose to forgive myself because of what it allows for. When I judge myself for believing the idea, so I become aware of the fact that I believe that I am lonely or I am alone, and therefore I do things that I'm ashamed of. Okay, so then I start judging myself. What's wrong with me? Why do I keep believing that I'm alone? That judgment just creates more and more clutter in the pathway of what I'm trying to get somewhere. So if I judge myself, it is simply not productive, and it gets in the way of what I actually want. So I choose to forgive myself because of what it allows for. That's number 2. And the third one, which speaks to me the most and is the deepest, is I value being forgiving. Out of all of the different attributes and different ways that I can be in this lifetime, the most godly I can be, the most godlike I can be, is forgiving. Because technically, if we were just animals, we were the top of the animal kingdom, it still doesn't make sense. If we were just here to survive, it doesn't make sense for us to forgive. And like we see in the history of Judaism, is that when Hashem gave us the Torah, Hashem gave it to us out of love. But in order for him to maintain the relationship with us, in order for him to still get what he actually wants, which is a dwelling place for himself down here, a place where he can be alive and be revealed in this physical world, he's going to have a nation. So, and if he gets rid of the nation, then he's going to have to find a different nation. He's going to have to find a different way. So, I don't quote me on this because I'm not that learned when it comes to this stuff, but I know that God gave the 10 Commandments. The Jewish people served and created the golden calf, which created a vacuum. Something had to give. There was conflict here. And what Hashem created, what God created at that point, was forgiveness and mercy and compassion. So for me, as a person who seeks to be as spiritual and as God-like as possible, the more God-like I am, the more empowered I am to be good and to do good in this world. I feel that me personally, my greatest contribution that I've found that I can be here in this world to people, especially when I'm trying to do coaching work, is to be forgiving and to be a source of the possibility of forgiveness. And that's my highest value. So I'm choosing to be forgiving, and I don't necessarily care. I do, but I try to not care as much as possible about what it is and who it is I'm forgiving, but just that I'm being forgiving and I have an opportunity to be forgiving, because for being forgiving and to be the source of forgiveness is one of my highest values. So just wanted to share that idea of the 3 levels of forgiveness and why we should forgive and why it's helpful and useful to forgive in the process of growth. Peace and love. All the best.